FlockData is a platform to help organizations bring information together from different sources and to try to make sense of it. As we like to say, collect, connect, and compare. So let's see how it works. This is a data set provided to us by one of our partners who asked us to use FlockData to try to understand what people were saying about Ebola in social media. So as we can see, here's a data set. This is roughly 40,000 tweets about Ebola. And what you see is basically unstructured text data. This is not particularly useful because it's very hard to understand what's going on in this. At best, you could search for different keywords. So the first thing we did was actually send the dataset to a third-party natural language processing service. And what we got back was the same raw text, but now it includes things like sentiment, categories, themes, and more. But what you'll see is that there is real inconsistency in the data. Some entries have categories but no themes, some have themes but no categories, some have sentiment and entities but no themes or categories, and so on. So what we really need with FlockData is the ability to support a very flexible data structure. And here is that flexible data structure that we're going to use to import into FlockData. This is a JavaScript object notation or JSON format. Let's log into the FlockData viewer and see what this information looks like once it's loaded. So the first thing we can do is come into the search and really search for any terms that we found. So let's search for Ebola and see what comes up. You'll notice that we get the full text of all of the tweets mentioning Ebola. We can search for countries or people located within that data set. Let's go deeper now and see what we can make out of some of the tags, categories, themes, and other things that were loaded along with the raw data. So let's go into the Analyze feature of the FlockData viewer. So the first thing we do here is we select the categories of information that we're interested in. Note that these categories actually come out of the business context of the data. So remember, when we processed that data, we got back things like places and sentiment. This core diagram actually shows the relationship between different categories of data. So here, for instance, is negative sentiment related to places. Let's add category to our analysis and see what happens. Here are the results. This shows a very high level of connected data within this data set. And we can look at categories and see how they relate to different sentiments and places, or really play with the data however we want. If we increase the threshold, we'll actually reduce a little bit of the noise in the data set, and that allows us to filter down a bit more. Another thing we can do is actually change the view from chord to matrix. This allows us to actually change our sorting algorithm as well, from sorting by name to sorting by occurrence. Let's see what happens here. The most frequently co-occurring sets of data migrate to the top left. This is a great way to look at this, almost like a heat map or a cluster analysis. We can see, for instance, what themes most closely correlate to what sentiment, and so on. Now, these matrix and chord diagrams aren't the only way to visualize data in FlockData. FlockData incorporates tools that let you do things like build dashboards with pie charts, timelines, geodata, and more. Using our API integration, these dashboards will be updated in real time as well, and they're perfectly shareable. And one more way to visualize data is through the graph functionality. So this is that same cancer research data visualized by the relationships between authors as they co-publish in different places. Now, one last thing to highlight about the way FlockData collects information. Using our API, FlockData will actually build a timeline of events. Each event will come in with the data in that JSON format that I showed you earlier, but if the data already exists, it will actually create a timeline showing you the differences between the data over time. So here we can see this is two versions of one piece of information, the original data and the update to the data. That's very helpful in understanding how the data has evolved, as well as answering questions like, what was the value of this last week? So that's FlockData, a way to integrate any type of information from any source, a data store that supports the type of indexing most needed for modern connected data, and a workbench to ask and answer data questions. Collect, connect, compare. FlockData. Thanks for watching.